This segment may contain spoilers. And welcome back to another edition of Spoiler Alert, a book chat powered through Printz Creek Library. I'm your host of the day, Ashlynn. Today we are going to be talking about The Sun is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. Did the universe only bring them together to keep them apart? Natasha. I'm a girl who believes in science and facts, not fate, not dreams that will never come true. I'm definitely not the kind of girl who meets a cute boy on a crowded New York City street and falls in love with him. Not when my family is 12 hours away from being deported to Jamaica. Falling in love with him won't be my story. Daniel. I've always been the good son, the good student, living up to my parents' high expectations. Never the poet or the dreamer, but something about Natasha makes me think that fate has something much more extraordinary in store for both of us. This is a love story between a Korean-American boy and a Jamaican girl. Their love story seems to be doomed as the Jamaican girl, Natasha, is being deported back to Jamaica by the end of the day. Let's get on to the questions, shall we? Number 1. What was the main conflict? The main conflict of this story was that Natasha is being deported to Jamaica from New York. Her family immigrated to New York when Natasha was a child. So she grew up in New York. New York is her home. She has never really been to Jamaica, doesn't really know the culture, like the language, like anything like that. So she's doing everything that she can this one day to see that her family can stay in New York. And along her struggle, I guess you could call it, of the day, she meets Daniel, this boy who is trying to uphold his family's expectations of him because his older brother was kind of a disappointment. So they meet, and Daniel decides that he's going to try out something like an experiment almost and see if he can make Natasha fall in love with him by the end of the day. And Natasha's like, yeah, right. Nice try, buddy. But, as the day goes on, they spend more time together, and believe it or not, they start falling in love. Question 2. If you got to ask the author one question, what would you ask and why? If I got to ask the author one question, it would be, what happens to Natasha and Daniel after the book ends? Because by the end of this day that they go through together, Natasha's family does get deported. She's not able to convince them that she should stay. So she does end up getting deported, and she says goodbye to Daniel, and they do try to keep in touch because there's a bit of an epilogue at the end. They do try to keep in touch, but it just doesn't really work out. And then they meet again on a plane many, many, many years later. So I would want to ask the author, do they get back together? Do they end up getting married? Do they end up living happily ever after they meet again on this plane? Because it seems like no feelings have disappeared on either of their parts. So I would just want to know what happens to them. I would love to read a sequel or something along those lines. Question 3. Did the book alter your perception in any way? I think that this book did alter my perception just a little bit, because I never really realized that there are people that have to go through the fear of being deported and having to leave everything that they know behind. Because I obviously have been in the U.S. and Pennsylvania my whole life. I was born here, my family's been here for years, so I never have to live in fear of that. But I guess it just never really occurred to me that there are people that do need to worry about that. I mean, I knew that it does happen, but being able to read a book through the eyes of someone whose family is being deported, and having to read about her fears and her anger about it, it was just very eye-opening. Question 4. What do you think the author's purpose in writing this book was? I think that the author's purpose in writing this book was to obviously write a love story, but to write a love story that is a little bit different than what you're used to. Like normally it's like boy meets girl, boy meets girl, they get together and they end up happily ever after, yada yada yada, right? So this was a little bit different because it's boy meets girl, boy like automatically is like, yes, this one, I like this one, I want to be with her, and girl is like, well no, I can't, I'm being deported, like I'm not staying here for much longer, just by the end of the day, and I need to work today, I need to do things today, and he's like, well, I'll help you, I'll come with you, and I just want to get to know you better. And then the ending isn't what you want it to be. It's not, oh, she gets to stay, and they stay together, and everybody lives happily ever after. She gets deported, she leaves, she's like, I love you, like the experiment worked, I've fallen in love with you, but I need to leave, like I can't, there's no way around it, and he lets her leave, and then he goes home, and then they just lose contact, which is really sad to me, because if they had such a connection, then it seems unfortunate that they had to say goodbye. And one probably thought all through this book, like, they get so close to being able to stay, and you probably are thinking, like, oh yes, they're going to get to stay, everything's going to work out, it's going to be fine, but then it doesn't. And it's just something different and new, and it's still fun to read, and it's just different. So question 5, favorite quote and why? So my favorite quote in this book is on page 340. It's, maybe their universe is just taking longer to form. This is my favorite quote because I just really like what it implies, like, so their universe, like the universe that they live in together, like the universe that they create, maybe it's not over, maybe it's not completely lost, it's just taking longer to form. It hasn't formed yet, it's beginning to, and then they have to go apart. Daniel to stay in New York with his family, and Natasha to go to Jamaica with her family. And maybe it implies that it isn't the end of them. It's not the ending of their relationship. It's not the ending of everything important between them. It's just maybe taking a little bit longer to form. If you understand what I'm getting at here. So yeah, that's my favorite quote of the book. So this was, spoiler alert, Sun is Also a Star. I highly recommend this book. I think I finished it in like 2 days. I highly recommend it. If you have read this book, please, please, please answer the questions yourself and put it in the comments. I would love to hear from you all. Until next time, happy reading!